Howdy, I'm Jammer. Alright, so a couple weeks back I went into my local comic book shop, Ground Zero Comics, and I was talking with the owner, Dave, and I bought about $100 worth of comics, graphic novels, and some individual issues as well. And at first there was an initial impulse of guilt. This is the moment where I was like, I only said I was going to come in, browse, maybe buy one thing, but then of course I found 5 or 6 books that I wanted to read. And I was talking to Dave because if you have ever been to Ground Zero Comics, you know Dave loves music and he loves records. If you want to know how much, I would definitely recommend you to check out the YouTube channel for Ground Zero Comics, and I would definitely recommend you just walk into the shop, talk to Dave. He'll tell you about music. But we talked a little bit about it because one of the things he and I have both observed is that we are at a point, him a little bit more so than me, in that we are both getting to a point where we recognize that we're not going to be able to read all the books that we want to and listen to all the music that we want to. Unfortunately, shocker, you only have so much time on this earth, and maybe it's hitting age 31 that I begin to realize, yeah, you're right, I really don't have that much time. And with the history of heart disease in my family being what it is, I probably have a lot less time than I really think. So, we just started talking about what do you do with your time, what do you do with your money, what do you do with your choices. And he mentioned how his mother would refer to feeding your soul. Now, I think I mentioned that when I did the Neil Gaiman video about tulips and the comic book Bubble Burst of the 1990s, which, gonna plug this again, if you haven't watched Dave's two-part series about the comic book Bubble Burst of the 1990s, check it out. It's phenomenal. I've watched it several times already. I've got it practically memorized at this point, but that's because it's really interesting. It's kind of like the big Beanie Baby bust of the 90s as well, but that's its own thing. The point is that there is a fundamental difference between somebody who purchases something with the sort of speculation that if I purchase this item, it's going to increase in value. Case in point, I have a copy of Hellblazer number 27, Hold Me by Neil Gaiman and Dave McKean. This issue is really hard to track down because they didn't print a lot of it, and because it's got Neil Gaiman and Dave McKean, which means, it might be worth something. This one came out to about $50, in fact, once I actually finally found it online, and I bought it, and I read it, and I still keep it in my collection because I really love this story so much. It's a beautiful story. That's what I do, or that's what I think when I purchased this book. Somebody, however, saw this book and said it's worth $50 and it might be worth more. And unfortunately, in terms of the field of comics, there's a lot of mentality to that. Now, part of this is just the aspect of collecting, period, and I most certainly am not immune from it. I collect coins. It's a nice, fun little hobby. I don't think I'm ever going to be super rich from it, but it's a nice, weird little investment thing that takes up an afternoon when I just feel like watching a movie. I can put my coins on the table, fill up my books. But at the same time, that's not feeding your soul. Purchasing Hellblazer number 27 because I love the story is feeding my soul. I don't ever intend to sell this book. I don't ever intend to make millions off of this book because this isn't Action Comics number 1. And if I had an Action Comics number 1, well, no, I'd probably sell that one because I really would like to have a pool. But there is a moment where we have to sort of assess, am I purchasing something because I want it and I think it will increase in value, or because I want it because it's going to feed my soul? It was a really lovely conversation, and it was formative, especially at a point in my life where there seems to be fewer and fewer formative experiences in the fact that I'm getting to a point, I know who I am, I know what I want, I know what I don't want. And so for something to really move me and really make me think was kind of an inspiration. It's really got me to stop and think, what am I doing with my time? What do I want to do? One of the things I want to do is I want to keep doing these videos because I love acting like a goof in front of a camera, and I love comics. And on the note of loving comics, you'll note, again, this is the Fritz the Cat by Robert Crumb that I still have not reviewed for this channel. I promise, I promise, I promise. I'm going to get to it. Maybe if I've got time tomorrow, I might try to sit down and do this one, but I do still need to do the comics for choice, because I've promised that one in at least like 3 or 4 different videos. We will get to Fritz, and oh boy, it's going to be fun when we get to Fritz. But on the note of Robert Crumb, I've noted before in the past, I really like the work of Robert Crumb. Not all of it, and we're going to get to that at some point in the future as well, but I really enjoy his style in terms of his drawing, in terms of his composition, in terms of his general aesthetic. There's a lot of really interesting material there, and I have been buying a fair number of Crumb books as of late, and of course, I didn't bring them all out. But I've purchased several in the last couple of weeks because I really like Crumb. I want to learn more about Crumb, and I really feel, as I've noted before, that I would really like to start making comics, and in fact, I have. And so because of that, I've been trying to do more and more research about what are some of the big comics that have had formative influences on the medium. And especially with Robert Crumb, there's one title that keeps coming up over and over again. Now, I recognize this video so far seems kind of rambly, so what is this video about? Well, I fed my soul, and I fed it a lot. Yeah. I fed my soul. Fritz, I'm going to take you out of the way. So this video is not just going to be about me showing off, but me kind of trying to make a promise to you, the viewer. Like I said, I've been wanting to make comics, and there's one comic which I've heard about over and over and over while I've read about the works of Robert Crumb, and that is Zap Comix. Zap Comix really came about kind of in the tail end of the 1960s and the early 1970s when Robert Crumb and a handful of other cartoonists, were living in the Haight-Ashbury. That's a basically hippie mecca in San Francisco. If you've ever heard any of the old tunes from the 1960s, you've probably heard the song at some point. If you're going to San Francisco, put a flower in your hair. That's because, for whatever reason, hippies flocked to that area, and it became sort of the cultural hub of the countercultural movement of the 1960s. And in that environment, Robert Crumb existed, and along with a handful of other comics artists, created Zap cartoons. This comic lasted decades and was a huge influence on anyone who made comics afterwards. Recently, I checked out a book by Linda Berry. She's a contemporary comics artist who's really interesting in terms of her approach to composition. She employs usually like composition books, and she does kind of like mixed media where she'll do scrapbooking, what have you. And in one of her in her book Syllabus, she actually talks about Zap, and this particular image came about. So I was debating over and over again. I talked to Dave at Ground Zero. I asked him to see would it be possible to buy it. He said yes, but in very limited quality. This is a Fantagraphic book. Fantagraphics is a very small publisher. They tend to put out limited editions. But this book, as you can see, is a 5-volume set with a collection of prints. I fed my soul. And if nothing else, it came in this cool box that had the freaking logo on it. And before you ask, yeah, I'm going to keep the cardboard box. I'm not a heathen. Okay. I haven't even taken the shrink wrap off of it. I've just been so freaking excited. Anyway, I've been pleased by this purchase, and I've shared photos of me going like, yeah, to all of my friends who, of course, are laughing their butt off at me, but it's just jammer at this point. What's the point of this video? Is it just me showing off? Is it just me showing you all that I'm going to be eating peanut butter for the next month? I probably will, actually, but to be fair, peanut butter's cheap, and, like, get a handful of peanut M&Ms, and you got yourself a meal. Anyway, no, this isn't showing off, look at this cool comic book that I own. this book is not going to increase in value. In fact, the moment I take the shrink wrap off of it, it's no longer going to be air quote mint. Which means if I ever try to resell it, I would probably be lucky to get $100 for it, if that. And I also have to take into consideration that I live with 2 dogs and 2 cats. This thing is going to get licked or drooled on or yacked on at some point. So, what's the point of this video? I guess, again, just to have a moment to discuss that if you love comics the way I do, and I recognize there's not a lot of people who like comics the way I do, there is a pleasure in reading something, yes, but there's also a pleasure in owning something, in possessing something. I recognize in today's digital landscape where technology is advancing every single day and digital comics are an ever-growing, we'll call it shadow in terms of the economic landscape of comics, but we also have to appreciate the fact that works like this are a testament to what has come before in the medium. It's an opportunity to really see how far comics has come. Like I said, Zap changed things so dramatically, and so one of the joys for me of this book is going to see works that by today's standards may not seem terribly shocking or depraved or sexy or erotic, what have you, but it's because of this series that comics got where it was today. There's just a pleasure in knowing that I get to enjoy this book, and anytime I want now, I can just go to my library, pull the book off the shelf, and read it. You may differ entirely with that summation, or that ultimate experience, and that's fine. So what's the point? I keep asking that again. The point is just to brag that I got a really cool new comic book, and then also hopefully reach out to you, the viewer, and offer to you a justification, a validation, or just a thought. There's a pleasure in owning something simply for its own sake, especially when it comes to comics, because this is not a stock or a savings bond or coins. This is not something that's going to increase in value, or at the very least, it's not really supposed to. You buy a $500 boxed set of comics, not because you think, hey, I'm going to purchase this and then I'm going to retire on it someday. You purchase this, and then when you retire years later and are living off of peanut butter indefinitely, you look to that box set of comics and go, it was worth it because it made me happy, and more importantly, it fed my soul. So, when you're approaching comics, I hope you have a couple moments like this where you can just geek out about the fact that you have something that you think is really cool and just revel in that experience. Especially right now when we're all just disconnected and lonely and isolated and losing our minds and turning wearing masks into politics somehow. I don't know. I've stopped trying to understand it. Revel in the moments where you can feed your soul, because they're really what makes life so worth it. And especially if you love comics like I do, take little moments to appreciate that you have a Hellblazer number 27, or maybe you have a Sandman number 19, or maybe you've got Far Sector number 1, or maybe you've got Zap. Whatever you've got, enjoy it. Life's way too short. Have some fun. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. I don't know what this video was or is. I think I just wanted to show off the book, and I also wanted to maybe try to make some sort of message out of it. If you're in here, holy crap, it's 13 minutes. This was supposed to be 5 minutes long. God, I need to just... Anyway, thank you for indulging me. Thank you for your time. If you've got a book that you've purchased recently that's fed your soul, leave a comment in the comment section below. I would love to hear it. And as always, hey, go read some comics.